Captain Voss and the Voidborn, the Coalition capital world, a marvel of advanced technology and culture, was in chaos. Towering spires that once symbolized unity and strength now stood as silent witnesses to the unfolding catastrophe. Captain Marcus Voss stood on the command deck of his flagship, his gaze locked on the tactical displays that flickered with urgent warnings. The calm, steady hum of the ship's systems was shattered by the shrill blare of alarms. The Voidborn had arrived. Admiral, multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. A junior officer shouted, her voice edged with panic. Voss didn't flinch. He watched as the ominous shapes of Voidborn ships materialized on the screen, sleek, almost organic vessels, their dark hulls shifting like shadows against the stars. Bring all batteries online, Voss ordered, his voice a steady counterpoint to the rising tension. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. The Voidborn wasted no time. Lances of emerald energy surged from their ships, slicing through the Coalition's orbital defenses like a hot knife through butter. Voss's eyes narrowed as the first explosions lit up the sky, the brilliant fireballs marking the destruction of Allied ships that had once stood proudly as humanity's protectors. Admiral, the second line of defense is down, another officer reported, his voice cracking under the strain. Voss nodded grimly, his mind racing. This was no mere skirmish. The Voidborn had come to annihilate. Signal the fleet to fall back, Voss commanded. He knew what had to be done, but the weight of it pressed heavily on him. We can't hold them here. Prepare for a full retreat. Around him, the bridge was a flurry of controlled chaos. Officers relayed orders, adjusted targeting systems, and plotted jump coordinates. Despite the dire situation, Voss remained a rock, his calm demeanor a lifeline for his crew. A massive explosion rocked the ship, sending a shudder through the deck. The tactical display flickered, and for a moment, Voss feared the worst. But the ship held together, its shields barely absorbing the impact. Admiral, we've lost the Resolute's sister ship, the communications officer reported. Voss clenched his fist, a brief flicker of emotion breaking through his stoic exterior. Another loss, another reminder that humanity was on the brink. Engage, jump drives. Get us out of here, Voss ordered, his voice cutting through the noise like steel. The stars on the view screen blurred as the ship prepared to jump. The Voidborn would continue their assault, but for now, survival was the priority. As the ship surged into the safety of hyperspace, Voss stared at the empty screen. The battle was lost, but the war had only just begun. Humanity would stand alone, and Voss knew he would be at the forefront, whatever the cost. The underground command center on Earth buzzed with frantic energy. Holographic displays flickered, projecting maps of burning worlds and fleets in retreat. Coalition leaders filled the room, their voices raised in heated debate, the gravity of the Voidborn threat pressing down on them all. This is madness, one alien leader, his skin a deep shade of blue, slammed a fist on the table. We're outmatched. We must consider surrender. Others nodded in agreement, their faces etched with fear. The Voidborn had decimated their defenses, and now they loomed over the galaxy like a shroud of death. Amidst the chaos, Captain Marcus Voss, nursing an injured arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage, stood silent, his expression hard as stone. We've faced worse, Voss said, his voice cutting through the clamor like a blade. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. His presence commanded respect, a beacon of determination amidst the rising tide of despair. Worse? The blue-skinned leader sneered. What be worse than the Voidborn? Voss stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. Humanity has always faced impossible odds. From the day we set foot on our own moon to the first interstellar war, we've been outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed at every turn. But we've never surrendered. We've fought with everything we had, even when the outcome was uncertain. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Surrender now, and we betray everything we stand for, everything our ancestors fought for. We don't give up because the odds are against us. We fight because it's who we are. It's what makes us human. The room was silent, the only sound, the hum of the holographic displays. Voss's words hung in the air, challenging the fear that gripped the coalition leaders. Dr. Elara Quinn, a tall woman with sharp features and a reputation for brilliance, stepped forward. Captain Voss is right. There is still hope. She glanced at Voss, a spark of something more than just professional respect in her eyes. I've been working on something, a prototype. It's untested, but it could be the key to turning the tide. Voss met her gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. What is it? A weapon, she replied, her voice steady. Something that could penetrate their defenses, something they won't see coming. But we need time, and we need to get it operational. Voss nodded, his resolve firming. Then we fight for that time. We hold the line. The tension in the room shifted. The fear was still there, but now it was tempered with a flicker of hope, the indomitable will of humanity shining through the darkness. Voss had made his stand, and the coalition would follow. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the leaders felt they had a fighting chance. The war room aboard the Resolute was dimly lit, its walls lined with glowing screens displaying the latest intelligence reports. In the center, a large tactical display table projected a holographic map of the galaxy, pinpointing key locations. Captain Marcus Voss stood at the head of the table, flanked by his most trusted officers, including the grizzled Sergeant Darius Cole. The air was thick with tension, but Voss's calm, authoritative presence anchored the room. Doctor. Elara Quinn, her expression serious, stepped forward. We've located the prototype, she began, gesturing to a distant point on the map. It's here, on a long-lost human colony at the edge of known space. The facility was abandoned decades ago, and all records were classified. If we can retrieve it, we might stand a chance against the Voidborn. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. What's the catch? Cole asked, his voice rough but steady. The Voidborn likely control the area. Quinn replied, they've been expanding their reach, and this sector is on their radar. We'll be going in blind, with no guarantee of what we'll find, or if we'll make it out. Voss studied the map, his mind racing through potential scenarios. We've faced worse, he said, his tone resolute. The prototype could turn the tide. If it's there, we need to get it. One of the officers, Lieutenant Harris, leaned in. It's a high-risk operation, sir. If we're caught, we won't be. Voss interrupted, his eyes sharp. We'll approach under the cover of the nebula here. He pointed to a swirling mass of gas on the map, and drop in low to avoid detection. Cole, you'll lead the ground team. Dr. Quinn, you'll handle extraction of the prototype. We'll have a short window, so precision is key. Cole nodded, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Just like old times, eh, Captain? Voss allowed himself a small smile. Let's hope this mission is just as successful. The tension in the room eased slightly, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. These men and women had been through countless battles together, and their bond was forged in the crucible of war. They trusted Voss implicitly, and his confidence was infectious. Dismissed, Voss ordered. The officers filed out, their faces set with determination. As they left, Voss caught Dr. Quinn's eye. Anything else I should know? She hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. Just be careful, Marcus. You too, Elara, he replied, his voice softer. They shared a brief moment of understanding before she turned to leave, and Voss was left alone with the map, the weight of the mission settling on his shoulders. The path ahead was perilous, but for Voss and his crew, failure was not an option. The space station hummed with activity, a hub of interstellar traffic where ships of all sizes docked and departed against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Marcus Voss moved through the bustling promenade, his mind heavy with the weight of the mission ahead. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Amy Aryan, standing by a large viewport that offered a stunning panorama of the cosmos. Amy waved enthusiastically as she spotted him, her face lighting up with a bright, carefree smile. Marcus, over here! Voss couldn't help but smile back as he approached her. She was dressed in a vibrant, flowing dress that seemed almost out of place in the sterile, utilitarian surroundings of the station. Yet she carried herself with an effortless grace that made her stand out, a burst of color in a world of grays and blues. Hi, Amy, Voss greeted her, his voice betraying none of the stress that gnawed at him. Guess what? Amy began, her voice bubbling with excitement. I just came back from the most amazing shopping spree. There's this new boutique that opened up on Deck 7, and they have the cutest dresses. I bought a few, okay, maybe more than a few. But you know me, I can never resist a good sale. Voss chuckled softly, the sound surprising even to him. I'm sure you found some great deals. And there's a fashion show next week, Amy continued, completely oblivious to the dark clouds hanging over Voss's mind. You have to come, Marcus. It'll be so much fun, and you could use a break from all that serious stuff you're always doing. Voss nodded, though he knew he wouldn't be able to attend. The war? The mission? It all seemed so distant in her world, a place untouched by the grim realities that consumed him daily. Yet, there was something comforting in Amy's innocence, in her ability to find joy in the mundane, even as the galaxy teetered on the brink of destruction. "I'll try," Voss said, the words more for her sake than his. He watched her, marveling at how someone could be so unaware of the storm raging around them, yet so full of life. In a way, Amy represented everything he was fighting to protect: the simple pleasures, the carefree moments, the ability to live without fear. For a brief moment, standing there with Amy, Voss allowed himself to forget the war, the Voidborn, and the impossible odds they faced. It was a fleeting respite, but one he desperately needed. As they parted ways, Voss felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mission ahead was perilous, but it was people like Amy who reminded him why he fought, why he couldn't afford to fail. With one last smile, he turned and headed back to his ship, ready to face whatever came next. The Resolute floated majestically in orbit above Earth, its hull gleaming under the sunlight, a testament to human engineering and resilience. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with urgency as crew members scurried about, preparing for their upcoming mission. The whir of machinery and the clatter of boots on the metal deck filled the air as officers checked weapon systems, calibrated shields, and secured vital supplies. Each task was crucial, a small but essential piece in the grand puzzle of their survival against the Voidborn threat. Captain Marcus Voss stood alone in his quarters, the familiar weight of solitude pressing on him. Holographic displays flickered in front of him, projecting the mission parameters that loomed large in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. With a sigh, he activated a small hologram of Amy Aryan, her cheerful face beaming back at him, a stark contrast to the gravity of his thoughts. "Hey, Marcus, I can't wait to hear about your next adventure," she chirped, her voice bright and full of life. Voss smiled despite himself, the warmth of her energy briefly illuminating his dark thoughts. He reached out, hovering his finger over the screen, hesitant. "I'm heading into the unknown, Amy. I need you to keep being you, okay? Don't worry about me," he said softly, recording a brief message. "Take care of yourself. I'll be back before you know it." He sent the message, hoping it masked the true danger that lay ahead. As her image faded, he felt a bittersweet tug in his chest, the weight of their connection contrasting sharply with the uncertainty of the mission. With a determined shake of his head, Voss turned away from the hologram and made his way to the bridge. Each step echoed with the reality of what was at stake. Lives depended on their success, and he was the one leading them into the fray. As he entered the bridge, the crew snapped to attention, their faces set with resolve, mirroring his own. "Status report," Voss commanded, his voice steady and firm. The crew members sprang into action, relaying updates, adjusting displays, and preparing for departure. The Resolute was a well-oiled machine, and together they had faced many battles. With the countdown initiated, Voss felt a surge of adrenaline. "Engines ready?" came the voice of the chief engineer. "Jump coordinates set." Another officer chimed in. "Let's do this," Voss said, his heart racing. The Resolute's engines roared to life, the vibrations coursing through the ship as they prepared to jump into hyperspace. The stars outside began to stretch, blurring into lines of light as the ship surged forward, breaking free of Earth's gravity. Voss took one last look at their home, a world that felt both distant and achingly close. As the familiar sights of Earth faded behind them, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. The mission had begun, and there would be no turning back. The Resolute glided cautiously through the heart of the nebula, its hull shimmering with the reflected hues of swirling gas clouds and vibrant flashes of energy discharges. The nebula was a chaotic tapestry of colors, deep purples and blues intermixed with streaks of electric white, creating an otherworldly beauty that belied the danger lurking within. Captain Marcus Voss stood on the bridge, eyes sharp, scanning the tactical displays for any sign of the Voidborn. "Steady as she goes," Voss ordered, his voice calm against the backdrop of the ship's hum. The crew moved in synchronized harmony, each member focused on their tasks. The nebula provided them a cloak, but it was also a treacherous maze, one where enemies could hide in plain sight. "Captain, Sensors are picking up unusual readings, Lieutenant Harris reported, his brow furrowed with concern. Keep a close watch, Voss replied, his instincts on high alert. We're not alone in here. Just as he spoke, alarms erupted across the bridge. Voidborn ships! 3 clicks to starboard! Harris shouted, his voice strained. The Resolute shuddered as the first of the Voidborn vessels emerged from the nebula's shifting light, sleek and predatory, its dark hull blending seamlessly with the surrounding chaos. Energy beams shot forth, slicing through the nebula and narrowly missing the Resolute. Evasive maneuvers. Engage thrusters, Voss commanded, adrenaline coursing through him. The crew responded instantly, the ship lurching as it ducked and weaved through the nebula's dense clouds, Voss using the chaotic landscape to their advantage. Returning fire, shouted Sergeant Darius Cole from his station, his hands flying over the targeting controls. The Resolute fired back, lancing beams of energy into the darkness, striking one of the Voidborn ships and sending it spiraling out of control. 2 more incoming. Harris warned, but Voss was already anticipating their move. Shift to a high-speed lateral course, Voss directed. We'll use the energy discharges as cover. The ship pivoted sharply, dodging enemy fire, while the nebula erupted in electric storms around them. The tactical display showed the Voidborn ships struggling to lock onto their target amidst the swirling chaos. Voss seized the opportunity. Prepare for a counterattack, he shouted, his heart racing as he felt the trust of his crew solidify around him. On my mark, fire at will! The Resolute unleashed a barrage of missiles, the projectiles streaking through the nebula's luminous haze. The crew cheered as 2 more Voidborn ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their remains dissolving into the nebula's colors. Damage report, Voss demanded, as the ship rocked under another wave of enemy fire. Shields holding at 80%, but we can't take much more, came the response. Voss's mind raced. They needed to escape before the Voidborn regrouped. Signal the fleet for immediate support. Engage jump drives as soon as we clear the area. With one last burst of speed, the Resolute darted through the nebula, narrowly avoiding the Voidborn's relentless pursuit. As they broke free, Voss felt the tension release, but the battle was far from over. Their narrow escape showcased the brilliance of his tactics, reinforcing the deep trust his crew had in him, a bond that would be crucial as the war raged on. The Resolute descended through the thick atmosphere of the desolate planet, its hull rattling against the turbulence. Below, the landscape unfurled, a vast expanse of dust and shadows, where the ruins of an ancient human colony jutted out like forgotten memories. Once a thriving hub of life, the colony now lay in decay, buildings crumbling and overgrown with creeping vines and sand. Captain Marcus Voss led his team out of the shuttle, the harsh wind biting at their exposed skin. Dust swirled around them, obscuring their view as they stepped onto the cracked pavement, remnants of a once bustling thoroughfare. Stay alert, he commanded, his voice steady despite the unease settling in his gut. We don't know how many Voidborn are here. As they moved deeper into the ruins, shadows danced across the dilapidated structures. Voss could almost hear the echoes of laughter and commerce, now replaced by an eerie silence that amplified their footsteps. The team approached an old research facility, its entrance partially collapsed but still accessible. Voss gestured for them to proceed cautiously. Dr. Quinn, do you have any idea where the prototype might be? Voss asked, scanning the darkened corridors ahead. Based on old schematics, it should be in the main lab, she replied, her voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. But I don't know what condition it's in. As they moved through the facility, the atmosphere shifted. The faint hum of machinery long dormant filled the air, punctuated by the occasional creak of the aging structure. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from the shadows, halting Voss in his tracks. Did you hear that? He whispered. The team froze, eyes wide, breaths held in anticipation. Before anyone could respond, a group of Voidborn scouts materialized from the darkness, sleek forms gliding silently forward, weapons raised. Contact! Voss shouted, instinctively moving into position. The moment erupted into chaos. Energy beams lit the corridor as both sides exchanged fire, bright flashes illuminating the dust and shadows. Fall back, Voss commanded, leading the charge as they sought cover behind fallen debris. The Voidborn were relentless, their attacks precise and lethal. Voss's team fired back, adrenaline surging as they fought to hold their ground. "Watch for traps," Cole yelled, narrowly avoiding a hidden explosive that detonated behind them, sending shrapnel flying. Voss felt the heat of the explosion on his back, the danger closing in. "Push forward. We need to reach the lab," Voss shouted, determination surging through him. The team regrouped and advanced, fighting through the onslaught. They maneuvered past traps and ambushes, each step fraught with peril. Finally, they reached the main lab, a large room filled with ancient technology and dusty consoles. Voss's heart raced as he spotted the prototype, a compact device flickering with faint light. "Got it!" Quinn exclaimed, her hands moving quickly to assess its condition. But their victory was short-lived. "Reinforcements are coming," Cole warned, eyes scanning the darkened entryway. "Let's move!" Voss shouted, urgency propelling them forward. The team gathered the prototype and prepared to fight their way out, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. The desolation of the colony surrounded them, a chilling reminder of the stakes they faced. Voss leaned back in his chair in his quarters aboard the Resolute, the ship humming quietly as it prepared to leave the desolate colony behind. The adrenaline from the firefight was still coursing through his veins, and he could feel the fatigue settling in, a heavy blanket after the chaos of battle. Just as he closed his eyes, the console on his desk chimed, alerting him to an incoming call. "Unidentified signal," the ship's AI reported, but Voss knew who it was before he answered. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the screen. "Amy!" he exclaimed, his expression softening as her bright face filled the display. She was surrounded by the comforting chaos of her home, vibrant and warm, a stark contrast to the cold reality of space. "Marcus, I was hoping to catch you." She beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. "I just got back from the market. You won't believe the amazing fruits they have right now. I got some exotic ones you've never tried," he chuckled, the sound surprising even himself. "What kind?" "Oh, I don't even know the names. They're just so colorful and pretty. And guess what? There's a new bakery that opened up. The pastries are divine. You have to try one when you come back." Her voice was a soothing balm, a reminder of normal life. Voss hid the exhaustion that tugged at him, forcing a smile as he listened. "Sounds like you're keeping busy." "Busy is an understatement. But you know me. I can't help it. I've got to enjoy life while I can." She twirled a lock of hair around her finger, her innocence brightening the dimness of his quarters. "How are you? Is everything okay? You look a bit tired." Voss felt a twinge of guilt, knowing that she remained blissfully unaware of the dangers he faced. "Just a little tired from the mission. It's been a long day, but we're safe now." "I wish you'd let me in on the adventure. You make it sound so thrilling," she laughed, her laughter ringing like a bell, so pure and untainted by the horrors of war. "It's not as glamorous as it sounds," Voss replied, trying to inject levity into his tone. "But I appreciate your concern. It helps keep my spirits up." "Good, because I need you to come back safe and sound. I want to hear all about your missions, especially if they're as exciting as you say." "Trust me, I'll be back before you know it," he assured her, though the weight of uncertainty loomed heavy in his heart. They exchanged pleasantries, the conversation a bright spark amidst the darkness of his reality. Voss's heart swelled with affection for her, a reminder of the life he was fighting to protect. The dimly lit tunnels of the colony echoed with the distant rumble of explosions, the ground trembling beneath Voss and his team as they navigated the narrow passages. Dust cascaded from the ceiling like falling snow, thick and choking. The prototype, now securely tucked under Quinn's arm, felt like a ticking clock, the urgency palpable as Voidborn forces closed in. "Keep moving," Voss urged, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. He took the lead, instinctually guiding his team through the labyrinth of corridors. The shadows twisted ominously, and the air was thick with the scent of burning debris. Behind them, the unmistakable sounds of Voidborn troops, low, guttural growls, and the whir of energy weapons spurred them on. "Captain, we have to find an exit," Cole called, glancing back nervously as a burst of energy beams whizzed past them, barely missing his shoulder. The Voidborn were relentless, and their pursuit was unyielding. "Left here," Voss shouted, veering into a narrow passage just as an explosion rocked the tunnel behind them. Dust and debris fell, forcing the team to duck as they sprinted forward, adrenaline pumping through their veins. Stay close, we can't lose anyone now. They pressed deeper into the dark, the familiar layout of the facility turning foreign with each step. Voss's heart raced, a mix of fear and determination driving him. Every second counted. The Voidborn would be on them in moments. A sudden rumble echoed through the passage, and Voss barely had time to shout, "Watch out!" before a section of the ceiling collapsed ahead of them. "Move!" Quinn yelled, shoving the others forward as she activated her wrist communicator. "The shuttle's just ahead!" Voss could see the flickering lights of their escape ship in the distance, but the path to it was obstructed by rubble. "We'll have to clear that debris," he shouted. They reached the entrance to the shuttle bay, only to find it partially blocked by fallen beams. Voss and Cole exchanged a quick glance before lunging into action. Together, they shoved aside the debris, the dust swirling around them as the noise of their work echoed through the tunnel. "Almost there," Cole grunted, muscles straining against the weight of the rubble. Voss could feel the Voidborn closing in, their snarls growing louder. Suddenly, a volley of shots rang out behind them. Voss spun around, firing his weapon into the darkness, the energy blasts illuminating the swirling dust. "Get in," he yelled, urgency rising in his voice. Finally, with a final push, the exit was clear. Voss turned back to his team, urgency propelling them forward. "Go! Go!" he urged as they scrambled inside the shuttle. As the doors sealed shut, the rumble of collapsing tunnels filled the air, a deafening roar that signaled their narrow escape. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and Voss took a deep breath as they launched into the sky. The Voidborn forces left behind, but the battle was far from over. The Resolute emerged from hyperspace, plunging into the chaos of battle above the roiling surface of the red giant star. Fiery tendrils of plasma and solar flares danced dangerously close, illuminating the massive fleet of human ships preparing to face the encroaching Voidborn armada. Captain Marcus Voss stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the tactical displays as the vast expanse of war unfolded before him. "Admiral, we're receiving incoming transmissions from the fleet," Lieutenant Harris announced, his voice tense. Voss nodded, the weight of command pressing heavily on his shoulders. The fleet was assembled, but the odds were daunting. The Voidborn ships, sleek, black, and menacing, loomed ahead, their presence sending a shiver of dread through the ranks. "Prepare for missile launch," Voss ordered, glancing at the swirling star that threatened to pull them off course. "On my mark." As the countdown reached 0, a barrage of missiles launched from the Resolute and the surrounding ships, streaking toward the enemy. The missiles burst through the darkness, exploding against the Voidborn vessels with brilliant flashes of light. But the Voidborn were prepared. Their ships retaliated, energy beams slicing through the void. Voss could see the brilliant lances of fire in the distance, striking true and tearing apart the frontline ships of their fleet. "Adjust course. Use the star's gravity well to our advantage," Voss shouted, his mind racing as he plotted the daring maneuver. He knew the risks. The gravity of the dying star could just as easily pull them into its fiery embrace. "Coordinates plotted?" Harris confirmed. "Executing maneuver now." The Resolute turned sharply, entering the gravitational pull of the star. The ship shuddered, but Voss held steady, feeling the thrill of the moment as they slingshot around the star. The surrounding ships followed suit, their formations breaking apart but their spirits igniting. "Now! Break to flank," Voss commanded, adrenaline surging through him. The fleet emerged from the other side of the star, charging directly into the Voidborn's flank. The sudden assault caught the enemy off guard, and the battle escalated into chaos. The Resolute led the charge, weapons blazing. Ships exchanged broadsides, energy beams illuminating the void as the sounds of battle filled the airwaves. The corridor of space erupted into a melee of destruction, with explosions rocking the fleet. Voss maneuvered the ship with precision, dodging enemy fire as they pressed deeper into the Voidborn lines. But the cost was heavy. Ships around them exploded in brilliant fireballs, crew members fighting bravely against overwhelming odds. Voss's heart pounded in his chest as he witnessed the destruction, knowing each loss was a dagger to their cause. "Press on! We can break through!" Voss shouted, rallying his crew even as the toll of battle weighed heavily on him. The Resolute surged forward, determined to turn the tide of the war, But the outcome remained uncertain, and the stakes had never been higher. The barren, cratered moon hung in the void, an eerie sentinel as Captain Marcus Voss and his team prepared to board the massive Voidborn dreadnought. After a fierce battle, their fleet had successfully disabled the ship's engines, rendering it a floating fortress vulnerable to human ingenuity. Voss could feel the tension crackle in the air as they suited up, weapons primed for the chaos that awaited them. "Ready, Voss?" Sergeant Darius Cole asked, a fierce determination in his eyes. Voss nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. "Let's move," Voss commanded as they launched into the airlock, the doors hissing open to reveal a dimly lit corridor beyond. The interior of the dreadnought was a labyrinth of shadows and metal, the air thick with an unsettling silence. As they breached the hull, the team activated their visors, revealing a tactical overlay that highlighted enemy movements. The Voidborn warriors were grotesque, their elongated forms merging with the darkness. Voss led the charge, ducking low as they maneuvered through the narrow passages, knowing that any misstep could lead to disaster. "Watch for traps," Voss warned as they pressed deeper into the ship, adrenaline fueling their every movement. Suddenly, the corridor erupted in blinding light as automated defenses activated, energy blasts raining down upon them. "Take cover!" Cole shouted, pulling Voss behind a column as bolts of energy scorched the metal around them. The team returned fire, targeting the defense systems, but they were outnumbered. "Voss, we need to disable those systems," Quinn shouted, her fingers dancing over her wrist console. "Cover me!" Voss replied, his mind racing. He darted toward the nearest control panel, knowing he had to act fast. As the team engaged the Voidborn warriors, Voss hacked into the ship's systems, overriding the automated defenses. A grin crossed his face as he rerouted the energy beams to fire upon the advancing Voidborn. "Nice work!" Cole yelled, taking advantage of the distraction to push forward. The tide began to turn, their advance fueled by Voss's tactical ingenuity. The dreadnought's interior morphed into a deadly maze, and the team fought through waves of Voidborn, using zero-gravity tactics to navigate the tight spaces. They ducked and rolled, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat, the echoes of battle filling the ship. Finally, they reached the bridge, a vast chamber shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the flickering control panels. Voss felt the weight of the moment settle on him. He knew the Voidborn commander awaited them, and this confrontation would determine the fate of their mission. As the doors hissed open, the commander turned, a figure of menace cloaked in shadows. Voss's heart raced, his weapon raised, as he stepped forward. "This ends here," he declared, the gravity of his words resonating within the chamber. The commander snarled, advancing with predatory grace. Voss felt the adrenaline surge, the stakes higher than ever. Their final showdown had begun. The tension in the air was electric as Captain Marcus Voss faced the Voidborn commander, a menacing figure cloaked in shadows. The bridge was dim, the flickering lights reflecting the chaos outside as the remnants of their battle raged on. Voss gripped his weapon tightly, the weight of the moment bearing down on him. "You think you can defeat me, human?" The Voidborn commander hissed, his voice a chilling rasp that echoed in the chamber. "You are nothing but a fleeting spark in the darkness." Voss narrowed his eyes, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. "I'm not here to die. I'm here to end this war," he shot back, determination hardening his resolve. With a sudden movement, the commander lunged forward, sleek and agile, his blade glinting in the dim light. Voss reacted instinctively, dodging to the side as the blade sliced through the air where he had just stood. They circled each other warily, each waiting for the other to make a move. Voss knew this was about more than just personal survival. It was about the fate of humanity. With a quick feint, the Voidborn commander struck again, but Voss anticipated the move. He sidestepped, using the momentum to bring his weapon down hard, striking the commander's arm and causing him to stumble back. "Impressive," the commander sneered, regaining his balance and wiping the blood from his mouth. "But it won't be enough." Voss felt a surge of frustration. The Voidborn were relentless, their strength unnerving. The commander lunged again, and Voss met him with a series of quick, calculated strikes, each one designed to exploit the commander's weaknesses. The fight became a deadly dance, filled with grunts of exertion and the clang of metal on metal. Just as Voss began to tire, he noticed a flicker of doubt in the commander's eyes. With renewed vigor, Voss pressed forward, forcing the commander into a corner. He could sense victory within reach. "You're not invincible," Voss shouted, channeling all his frustration into one final strike. The commander stumbled, and in that moment of vulnerability, Voss capitalized, delivering a decisive blow that sent the Voidborn commander crashing to the ground. The commander gasped, the light fading from his eyes. "You may have won this battle," he hissed, "but the war will never end." With that, his body went limp, and Voss stepped back, breathing heavily as the adrenaline faded. Voss took a moment to gather himself, feeling the weight of the moment wash over him. He had won, but the cost had been immense. As he turned to leave the bridge, the ship trembled, alarms blaring. "Captain!" Quinn's voice crackled over the comms. "We need to evacuate. The Voidborn will retaliate." "On my way," Voss replied, racing toward the exit. He joined his team as they made their way to the shuttle bay, the victory tinged with urgency. As they boarded their shuttle and blasted off into space, Voss cast one last glance at the dreadnought. The Voidborn were dangerous, but humanity had proven its resilience. They would fight, not just for survival, but for a future worth living. The battle was just one part of a larger war, and Voss felt the fire of determination ignite within him. "Let's head home," he said, his voice resolute. They were bruised and battered, but they were alive, and together they would continue to fight for the future of humanity. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future updates from Bone Spears and Starships.